New Jack said he knocked me out 3 times because
I think Hogan would have to abandon you as a friend if that.
oh, he said it more than me.
He did some work with Vic Grimes.
Yeah.
He had a program with Vic Grimes, and wanted to know your impressions of working with him, as well as that infamous program that he had with New Jack. If you have any thoughts of that, and that really tremendous bump off the scaffold that you no doubt are aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. Vic is a friend of mine. I say he's a friend of mine. We actually trained together. We started out together. I don't know, when it very first happened, I remember seeing, I think it was Monday morning or something, that Saturday night there was a show in XPW, and I see a clip of Vic getting thrown off a scaffold by New Jack. So when I see him get thrown off the scaffold, I call him, right? So this is like Monday morning. So when I call him, his mother answers, and I'm like, hi, this is, Tony Jones. She's like, hi, Tony. I go, is Vic around? And she goes, yeah, he's right here. So she puts him on the phone. I'm like, Vic, are you okay? He goes, I'm in the hospital, brother. And I said, really? I go, what happened? He said, New Jack tried to kill me. So, so that's what happened. So, according to Vic, he said, everything was planned. Everything was planned, even the bump off the scaffold. But the part where he got shocked and then he just got thrown off, apparently that part wasn't supposed to happen.
And as far as New Jack, have anything to share about him? I did one of his last interviews, got along with him the couple times I met him, but he definitely has an eccentric side.
Yeah, that's for sure. But I'll tell you, what a great guy. He was a great brother to me. He helped me a lot. I actually went and trained with Jack several times. Plus, he would run kind of like a seminar. If you went to ECW and you were a wrestler and you wanted to try out, you would kind of have to attend like a seminar workout. And then if you were really good, they might give you a chance with one of the others to earn a spot, have a tryout, maybe come out as part of a faction or something. And he would always run that stuff. And he really cared about everybody. And he really tried to teach everybody something on how to be better version of themselves, as a wrestler. And Jack was a very good wrestler. I remember the one time that he was teaching everybody in the tryouts, and somebody talked some shit like, oh, well, I don't really want to get cut with a fork and then have a whole match. And somebody was talking like that. And he was like, oh, yeah, come on. And he like grabbed him and he did, tackle, drop down, leapfrog, hip toss, and ran a whole bunch of spots. And he was perfect in the hard cam side where he needed to be. And then the person rolled out and they were like, all right, I'm going to shut up. And then he was like, and everybody was like, yeah, he popped the wrestlers watching.
One of the feuds that, in my mind, when I saw it, stood out from your ECW tenure was with the late great Jerome Young, New Jack.
Yeah, Jack.
And R.I.P. But I wanted to ask you about working with him, and especially that high profile match you had in 2000. Was that guilty as charged for the King of the Streets moniker, or any other matches that you had with New Jack that stand out in your mind?
Man, I love Jack. Jack was an awesome dude. I mean, he got a bum rap for a lot of the things that he's done, but we always clicked. I just did what I was told. I worked. And we had a good relationship. I've done anything for the guy. Those matches were just memorable. It was him that gave me the opportunity to even put his shoulders down at the 1, 2, 3. I mean, he was always giving. He was always risking his body for me. I never, ever got hurt. Yeah, little nips and scrapes and stuff. I mean, that was part of the job. But Jack always protected me and never put my life in danger. I never felt that I was going to get hurt, because he always took the blunt of the force. And, I miss him. We always had a good time. I mean, he was never the same after the incident with Vic Grimes. As the years went on, he was getting kind of, and I'm not knocking him or anything. It's just I noticed his his mood was different, you know, like just different, you know, compared to the times I knew him before. So, but again, the guy, I just have nothing but fond memories of him. I just have nothing but what's up, Anarchy, man? Miss you, man. And I got fun, you know, I got some funny stories about Puerto Rico with
We'll
Anarchy.
get there.
Yeah,
Yep.
but Jack was, like I said, I miss him so much because, like I said, we had fun. And a lot of people just think of him as a violent dude and a guy who was just like half cocked. Yeah, I saw that, but it never came on my side of the fence because he showed me respect. I showed him. But like I said, he always had my back, and like I said, I would do anything for him, you know. And I just wish he was still around.
Of course, one of my students, Vic Grimes, was a big star down there.
I mean, people talk about the Foley bump off the cage. I consider that by far to be the most dangerous bump a wrestler has ever taken that's at least been on TV.
Yes.
There's a lot of mythology around that. We had Angel Medina on the podcast about a month ago where he talked about his experiences with New Jack and that particular setup in particular. What did we haven't heard much from Vic's perspective about what happened there and the taser and all that sort of stuff. Did he get into any of those details with you?
Yeah, he didn't get tased. New Jack wasn't trying to kill him. You can even see on the footage, you know, Vic takes a heel bump off of the scaffold. You know, he takes his own bump, and Vic's such a big guy that if New Jack wouldn't have been able to pick him up and toss him anywhere if he don't want to go. New Jack could have tased him and kicked him off of the scaffold to where he's trying to hold on and he tumbles off of it, you know, but the way he took that bump, that wasn't, you know, that was just a bump. And it was just people sometimes they don't think about the distance. So Vic tried to bump shallow, but because of the height, even a shallow bump by the time you're at the bottom has turned into a long bump, you know, and that's what ended up being bad. It would have been a lot better if he would have just fallen straight down. That's how you want to go, not off like he did.
I didn't watch the match as it was going on. I was in the locker room for it. I do remember the kid saying that he was trained and he was of age. That I know for a fact that he said, but you know, I just remember the aftermath and it was brutal. And, yeah, it was horrible. I wasn't a fan of it at all.
Many people on here, of course, are asking about your memories and thoughts on New Jack's passing, who just passed away a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago today, actually.
I was at a convention. I was in Indianapolis at the Squared Circle Expo, and I was doing a Twitch stream. I was live, and one of the fans in the chat said, "Hey, did you hear New Jack died?" And I said, "What?" And so I said to Chad, the guy next to me, I said, "Can you look that up and see if it's legit?" Because, you know, sometimes people just write stuff, and it had just hit, boom, boom, boom. It was all over the place, and my heart just dropped. I thought he was doing well. Corona, I hadn't really seen anyone. I saw him, I think, right before Corona hit. And he looked great. He looked like he was doing well. And we were supposed to work on a project that's coming up together. So I was taken aback. I mean, I started getting all these mass texts with "I love you" and blah, blah, blah. The phone started ringing. I started calling people, and it's just terrible because there are so many people in that locker room that have passed that, you know, you develop relationships with, but they become your family. And New Jack was part of my family. So it's horrible when anything like this happens. But I was just watching, Legends of the Extreme, I think it's called, on High Spots. And, it was Shane and then Mike Johnson and then me and then New Jack. And I was laughing my ass off watching this. New Jack was one of the, if you didn't know him, you would never know. He was one of the funniest guys in the world. And he had me cracking up through this whole thing. And that's the way I just want to remember him, being that fun-loving, funny man. So.
Are you surprised that it was heart-related, considering his admitted drug use over the decades?
I mean, no, doesn't drugs lead to heart issues sometimes? I mean, I think there was an episode where he said before that, you know, he did so much coke, his heart stopped and they had to bring him back to life. His words, not mine. So no, I kind of was surprised that he passed away from a heart attack. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, could it be because of his excessive partying? We don't know what caused it. I have no clue, but I don't care what caused it. It just sucks. I'm just sad about it.
Did you see that documentary on New Jack that came out earlier this year?
Yes, I did.
What did you think about it?
I mean, you know, it just depends. You know, I know New Jack personally, and New Jack is all about the business. I mean, you know, I've never had an issue with Jack, but at the same time, if somebody ever brings the issue or a situation to Jack, he's not one to turn it down.
Wasn't shocked, right? You know, Jack lived, as the fans all know, he lived fast and he lived hard. But Jack was one of the ingredients of many that went into ECW that made it so special and so different. You know, he used to come back from the ring and, you know, his heart would be beating 1,000,000 miles an hour, and, you know, he'd collapse in the dressing room. You know, tell him, dude, like, you know, stop, you know, do it. There's different ways you can do this, and not, you know, when you're 25 and all the kids out there listening to this, please listen to this. You know, there was a time you could drop us off of the buildings, you know, or Jack diving off of God knows what, and get right back up and go to the back and have a beer, and, you know, nothing hurt. But what you do when you're 25 or 35 comes with you to when you're 50, 55, 60. And if you did a little too much back then, it could get you now. You know, the old saying, you are what you eat, right? You know, it's your body's your temple, that sort of thing. And I know that all sounds corny and sort of stupid, but other than the OxyContin, drugs were never my deal. And I can probably count on my fingers and toes how many times in my life I've been legally drunk. I don't like the feeling. I like having a couple drinks with my friends and shooting the shit with my friends. I just don't like the feeling of being inebriated and, you know, the bed spins and all of that. So my experience of partying on the road is vastly different from the majority of the people partying on the road. More times than not, I was up in my room either with Francine at that period or with whoever I was traveling with at the time, and either sleeping before they got back after the bar closed or watching ESPN or HBO or something. New Jack's passing, you know, again, it sounds like cliches. There's been so many things said. There will never be another New Jack, right? When I watched the Vice segment on him, you know, I've known Jack since, let me think, 96 or 7. So quite a while ago, quarter century or better. There were things in there that I learned. Remember I said earlier that I'd learned I didn't know previously. I was completely unaware of his upbringing. You'd hear Jack say some of those things in his promos. And to be honest with you, when Jack got to the building, you weren't quite sure where Jerome Young dropped off and New Jack picked up. They became sort of one and the same. But I did have the kind of relationship with Jack that mostly was forged later in TNA, where he and I would sit in hotel rooms and just BS for a couple of hours, and, you know, no partying or anything, just sitting there and bullshitting, and got to see a completely different side of him than what the cameras see or what we saw in the ECW dressing room. And, you know, there was a damn good guy under that, but a damn good guy that you didn't want to fool with. And the way I liken it in my head is that New Jack was the front that Jerome Young put up to protect him from all that stuff that we heard in the Vice Dark Side of the Ring, and, you know, and that was a legit thing. You know, Jack wasn't just going to walk, be the guy that barked. He also had a bite to go with that if it had to. But, he and I, would joke around and say things in the dressing room to each other that most people would find distasteful or, politically incorrect by today's standards. But that's the kind of relationship that we had. We were brothers. And, that just, again, a little sidebar for me. I think that's where our world right now and all the craziness that we're seeing, you're still living through a shutdown up there in Canada, is, I'm a political scientist, right? I taught it for 7 years. I've spent my adult life learning it. But believe it or not, as much as I love politics, there are times that I don't want politics. If I turn on wrestling, I don't give a rat's ass what your politics are. If I turn on a football game, a basketball game, I want to watch football, basketball, wrestling, racing, whatever. There's a place for politics and there's places for not politics. Most people want to turn on sports to get away from all that insanity, and yet it's being bled in. You're one of the boys, so being in the dressing room is a completely different world. One time in an ECW promo, I used the antiquated, from the old world, the inner holy of holies, right? This is the one place we can go and still be us. We can let our hair down. We can say whatever we want to each other. We can fight. We can kiss, hug, whatever. That's our inner sanctum. And Jack and I had a special kind of relationship there. And so for his passing, to answer the question finally, I was heartbroken to hear it. Not shocked, but heartbroken.
You mentioned you wrestled New Jack. What was your experience working with New Jack?
I had no problem with New Jack. He was, some of the stuff was dangerous, of course, but I had no, in fact, the last match I wrestled him, he came off of a balcony in Marietta, Georgia. It was at least 2 stories up in the air. And he came off this balcony, and I was on one of those. Tables, and when he hit me on the table, he didn't hurt me. But what happened is the table basically exploded, and one of the legs of the table, the top part of the leg, it came through the table and it ripped a hole in the back of my head. And so we ended up cutting off a little bit of the excess skin and just super gluing it shut. And I never even got stitches on it.
Let's go back a little bit. We was in North Georgia wrestling, me and New Jack. So Jack was New Jack. He was already New Jack. See what I'm saying? And I was trying all kind of gimmicks, man. I had on karate pants. I had paint on my face. I used to come to the ring with machete. I would eat meat, raw meat. You name it, man. I was trying to do it. So, while we were in the streets together, kicking it, because we knew each other before actually the business, before we found out that we was working, I told him, I said, hey, man, would you like to tag? He said, yeah. I said, all right. So we finally got together and we did a few matches together and stuff. We didn't have no name at the time. I was just Mustafa Saeed, and it was New Jack. And New Jack was good people, man. So I know people was talking about how crazy he is, man. But New Jack was my brother, man. New Jerome, that was my brother, man. We had a difference of opinion and things like that. And he'd get mad at me. And I had it coming a lot of times because I was doing some bullshit. You know what I'm saying? But it was all good. You know what I'm saying? And we forgave each other. And every time they would have a shoot interview and he was going off on me a few times, he would call me that next day. Hey, we got something going on, bro. Stay ready. You know what I'm saying? So what ended up happening was we worked down at Stone Mountain, Georgia, in a show. It was with Kevin Sullivan, Ronnie Garvin, and all them guys like that. And we came out, and Jim Cornette gave us an offer, man. That was it. What's his name? Jim Cornette gave us the name. And he said, how about the gangsters? And we was already doing stuff out in the street. So we all laughed. But I don't think his laughing was different than our laughing. You know what I'm saying? So the New Jack he was a bounty hunter. Jerome, man, he's something else, man. You know what I'm saying? So he was out there and I was out there. And he came up with the gangsters, man. And we didn't look back. You know what I'm saying?
Would you hang out with him in your off time, I guess? Or
Oh yeah, man, Jerome, man, we hang out all the time, man. We was all, man, drunk all the time, man. I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I was never sober a lot in my career. You know, I was gonna have me a ball, man. You know what I'm saying? I said I got to get down. You know what I'm saying? I got to function the way I know how to function. You see what I'm saying? And but I'm not sitting there saying that that's the way to go all the time. I was a functional drunk.
And did you see the new Jack Dark Side of the Ring?
Yeah, I was in it. You know what, though, man? I will say this, and I really miss the brother, man. You know what I'm saying? You know, we laughed, like I told some people, we laughed more than 10 lifetimes when we were hanging out, man, and working together at times. And, you know, he was already a talent. And I'll tell you this, people, none of that stuff was my idea. You know, when we were called the gangsters, Jack, the one, came up and told me, hey, man, buy this. Let's get these fatigues. We need to wear this, you know, and things like that, man. I was to get the money, man. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want no belts. I tried to take the belt to the pawn shop one time. I tried to take that belt to the pawn shop. That man said, man, nah, I don't take that. I don't take that with you.
So how did you guys end up in ECW?
Well, that was Jack's doing, because it was Cornette and Paul Lee, I think, talked a little bit. I think, you know, promoters. Let me tell you something about people like promoters and bookers. You know, they are good at what they do, but don't believe them. Do not believe them until the money's in your pocket. I'll say it like that. But anyway, they were talking, and next thing you know, we end up going up to ECW. Jack told me, he said, hey, man, we're going to ECW. I said, what's that? Because, you know, like I said, there wasn't no social media back in the day. It was a little bit of internet and things like that, but, you know, it wasn't like it is now, you know. Because, first of all, some of the stuff we did back then, we wouldn't be able to be on TV doing some of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? The blood and the chairs and the tables and those things back in the day. And we had the X-rated kind of things with the females, you know, getting pile drive with G-strings on. You know what I'm saying? You want to see that on now, because the way we were talking, you know, it was everything, man. The language was bad. But when we end up there, man, we was pitted. They put us against Public Enemy right away, man. That was great. That was great.
I don't know if you were there for the mass transit thing, and what are your thoughts?
Of course, I was in the ring when I seen that blood skeeting everywhere. You know what I'm saying? I was the one who picked them up and power slammed. You know, I didn't know. Next thing you know, I looked back, man, I had blood all on my back. And I said, oh, boy. I said, we're going to need a medic. And the kid said that we're in the back of the dressing room, okay, that he was 21. But he just didn't. I had a bad feeling about before I even went out there, because he wasn't in good shape. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't in no kind of shape at all. Not to say that you got to be muscular, super muscular, but come on, man. The man must have had at that time, and I'm not now. I know he's gone now, but you know, he must have had 30-50% body fat on him, man. You know what I'm saying? And
it's okay. We knock dead people on this channel all the time.
Okay, I got you. And, you know, and he didn't belong, man. You know what I'm saying? 21. That's what he said he was, but he wasn't but 17, man. And Jack got a hold of him. It was over. And then I got mine in, and we got out the ring, man, and said, man, it's terrible out there. I said, what? And I looked back. I said, man, look at all that blood.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot worse than that working in bars. So I thought that people take that incident a little bit too seriously for what it was. It's nothing that bad, really.
Exactly.
Stitches.
Were you around for the mass transit incident?
Yeah. The mass transit incident was really unfortunate for everybody involved, really. And the weird thing is, like, I saw the kid in the locker room, and I thought he worked for the building. We were at a racetrack, and I think it was fall in Revere, Massachusetts. And I'm sitting there, I'm like watching this guy walking around the locker room. I was like, oh, maybe he's security guard for the racetrack. And you know, it was so weird because other people said he when he showed up with like 2 midget wrestlers, and he tried to get on the show, and he pitched himself to Paulie, saying that, you know, he was doing this this Ralph Cramden gimmick. He wanted to wrestle as Ralph Cramden, and Paulie was like, nah, you'll be mass transit. And I mean, this whole thing happened because originally Devon and Axel Rotten were a tag team, and for whatever reason Axel couldn't make the show. So as a last minute replacement, you know, usually, you know, you show up and you introduce yourself, and you know, if they decide to use you, they use you. And this kid had said he was trained by Killer Kowalski. And he said he was, you know, older than what he was. I forget what he said, but at the time he was 16, 17. I believe he said he was 19. And the ironic thing about the whole mass transit thing is he claimed he was trained by Killer Kowalski, and normally Killer Kowalski would come to these events with his students, and, you know, before every ECW show, the younger guys would get in the ring, roll around, you know, for all the events. And Tracy Smothers, who's an unsung hero to a lot of the ECW younger guys, because he would get there, do drills and stuff like that, and cardiovascular stuff. So, you know, our guys would work out with Killer Kowalski's guys. Well, this show, Killer Kowalski didn't come to this event. He didn't bring his students. And if, you know, this kid Mass Transit had claimed he was trained by Killer Kowalski, we could have had Killer there to say, hey, he's not my student, this guy's obviously lying. So the kid lies about his age, lies about his experience, and walks around the locker room, and he has completely no etiquette whatsoever. You know, when I was trained by Al, go in the locker room, put your bags down, sit down, mouth closed, ears open, yes sir, no sir. You know, Mass Transit walks around, there's stuff, you know, for the boys. He's going up, you know, drinking in the drinks, and he pops down next to Taz and lights up a cigarette, which, you know, if Taz is clean living, Taz doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, this kid's like lighting up a cigarette, and, you know, Taz is like, what the fuck? Yeah. So I was like, let me get away. No, I don't want to witness this. But apparently they were going over the match, which again, if you were trained properly, you would know just to listen and ask, what am I doing in the match? You know, like the first big name I ever worked was McFoley as Cactus Jack in a tag match, and I didn't even think to suggest anything to McFoley, Cactus Jack. He's the veteran. He's going to tell me what to do. So the kid goes up to Devon Dudley and the Gangsters and says, hey, this is what I want to do, which is like, all three of them, the veterans of the locker room, go, no, this is what we're doing. And he insisted, and I think he even insisted, you know, the midgets get involved with the match too, which, I don't know. If I'm in somebody's locker room for the first time, just mouth closed, ears open. So it got to the point where he really just aggravated the situation where, you know, if he would have just went in and did what he was told, he probably would have had it. You know, because I was a young guy too, and I wrestled New Jack, and New Jack was fine with me. You know, I said, "What are we doing?" And he let us know, and if you know, he thought of an idea for me, he would tell me what to do, and it's unfortunate because, you know, I watched the match too as it happened. You know, there's a little area where you go up these steps and see over the curtain. It was brutal. It was brutal. And then, like I've said before, you know, anybody with experience would know this. There's a lot of things a person with experience would know to do. A person with experience and proper training would know never let somebody else cut you. Don't ever let somebody else blade you, because you know your pain threshold. You know your pain threshold. First day with the new math. Sorry. You know how deep is too deep. Whether it's a scratch or a poke or whatever. Somebody else gigging you don't do it. It's not safe. It's not sanitary. And he went to New Jack and said, "Hey, can you cut me?" Oh. If you're asking somebody to gig you, New Jack's the Leonardo da Vinci of blading. If you're going to say somebody come look at their own forehead, and New Jack's forehead looks like a MapQuest of pro wrestling, and so like I said, it's so unfortunate that Killer Kowalski wasn't there to say, nah, he's full of shit. It's unfortunate that the kid lied to get into the locker room, lied to get in on the match, lied about his experience, lied about, about his age. And I mean, if you go back in history, this happened, in the WWE with the Chuck Austin incident, where the guy just showed up and lied about his experience and wound up getting paralyzed in the ring by Marty Jannetty. So you think people would just learn from, it's an unfortunate incident of history repeating itself. No, when you train to wrestle, it's not like you go to DeVry Institute and you get a certificate of pro wrestling. Hey, this is my completion stage of pro wrestling. There's nothing like that. You go by somebody's word, or word of mouth, and there's no way to vet this kid's facts or lack of facts and his lies. So unfortunately, because somebody lied about their experience, age, a company almost got shut down, and a lot of people almost lost a lot of work and opportunity, and it's a shame for everyone involved.
Is it true that New Jack actually dated Terry Reynolds for a while?
Yeah, I believe New Jack dated Terry Reynolds, but other than that, I don't know any details. You see photos on Facebook. Oh, that's cool. I like Terry. I like Jack.
My experience with New Jack was fairly limited overall, but I thought I would add my commentary about him too for this compilation video. The first time I remember him acknowledging me was in a video he put out around 2011 when I went public about my whole Hep C issue with Abdullah the Butcher infecting me, which was proven in court in both Canada and the US. He had put out a video talking about my situation, and I guess Abdullah had accused New Jack of having AIDS in the past, so he was showing his blood test results showing that he did not have AIDS, and laughing at Abdullah for accusing him of this when meanwhile he's wrestling with Hep C and actually slicing people with used razor blades with Hep C blood on it. So I remember at that point, other than in Canada and Puerto Rico, I wasn't really known in wrestling. It's before I had a YouTube channel. So I was like, holy crap, New Jack knows about my story, saw the documentary about it. I was surprised at that. And then I think it was March of 2013 or April, around WrestleMania weekend in New Jersey. I was there helping superstar Billy Graham the last time he did a public autograph session. And I remember I had my ex-wife with me, and we were going into the elevator at the hotel, which was a hotel where pretty much all the wrestlers were staying at from WrestleCon. And we're in there alone, about to go up to our room, and then New Jack walks in. And I only knew the New Jack from his reputation. This was before shoot interviews were really posted as much as they are today online, and you only heard like the crazy stories about him. Now there's more of a balanced view of him out there. But I just remember I was actually going through my Hep C treatment at this time in 2013, and I'd lost a ton of weight. And I remember thinking to myself, is this guy going to be rude to my wife? Because, you know, I really don't want to have to stand up for either him being rude to either of us while I'm going through this crap. And I just remember kind of sizing myself up to him. But then we got to the floor and he was on the same floor as us. And I remember he kind of smiled and was like, go ahead. So being very polite and telling us to go up the elevator before him. So I'm like, he's cool after all. And then I think we saw him a bunch more times that weekend. I think he had his wife or girlfriend that weekend with him too. It's not, I never really talked to him because I had no reason to talk to him at that time. But he was always polite and stuff. I tried to get a shoot interview with him years later once I'd started the YouTube channel, when I was going to Philadelphia for something. Or actually, I don't even remember where he lived. But it was a time when I was still traveling and I was going on one of my U.S. trips to do an in-person interview, and I had reached out to him. And he asked for an amount that was just an insanely large amount. So first of all, I wouldn't have made that money back. Second of all, I didn't even have that much money to spend on a shoot interview. So I didn't ask him again for a couple of years. And I noticed he must have been watching the channel or something, because I noticed he was following the Hannibal TV on Twitter. So I thought to myself, oh, he knows about the shoot interviews. Maybe I'll send this guy a message. Maybe he'll go down in price, since I've interviewed a lot of his friends by this point. And his name had actually come up in a bunch of the shoot interviews, as you've seen now in this compilation video. So when I asked him this time, he actually gave a number that was considerably lower than his first offer, like much lower than I was even expecting to pay. So I was happy about it, agreed to it. Then I pay him, but he says that it didn't go through on his PayPal. So I try to get a refund. PayPal says it's showing that it's gone through. The only way to get a refund is to have the guy do the refund. So he's insisting he didn't get it. In the end, the fans were demanding this interview, and I was in a decent financial situation at this point. I was still living with my wife, had a lot less expenses, and the fans wanted it, and he's known for giving great shoot interviews. So I'm like, what the hell? I'll just send him the money again to his other email account. But he had also agreed to do 90 minutes by this point to make up, because he understood and could see that I had sent it to the other interview. So I think the agreement was, okay, well, I'm going to give you're going to give an extra half hour then if I have to send it a second time, because I did lose the first amount. So he had agreed to that. And then I remember we go to do the interview, and it was not the same New Jack as we've seen in the other interviews. Most of his answers were very brief. He was not as animated. And this could have had to do with his health, because he passed away not long after. So who knows? He could have also been sedated, because I did see some footage of him after my interview where he was back to his wild side. But maybe he also, I don't know, maybe he was in pain or something in the interview. I don't know. All I know is I was really disappointed and angry that I had paid double for this. And I didn't even get 90 minutes, because I didn't even get 60 minutes. because his answers were so brief. He answered 3 pages worth of questions in less than an hour. So I had to put some other footage at the end of his shooting interview just to make it an hour. So I remember I was so mad. I like very, very roughly opened my door on the way out of my office, to the point that I actually broke the door of my office because I was so mad. And I later used that door that I broke in a match against Rene Dupree in Kingston, Ontario, Blood Hunter against Rene Dupree, because the door was useless because I busted it. But yeah, so I was really pissed, but in the end, he ended up passing away shortly after. I got him off the bucket list of interviews. I did want to wrestle him, but SWE Fury tried to get it back when that company existed, and I was wrestling for them as Blood Hunter, but he had some issue with his leg at that point and wasn't taking wrestling bookings. So the match never happened, and he did pass away. So again, my experience, he's actually polite and stuff in person, not going out looking for fights necessarily like I had expected. I expected for him to be more like his character when, as I said, when he walked onto that elevator. But he ended up being a gentleman. As far as the pay thing, that I definitely felt like I was being worked. But in the end, if I hadn't done it at that point, I never would have been able to add him to my list of wrestlers I've interviewed before they passed away. So sorry to hear that he passed. I don't know how much shooter work there is to all of his incidents, because wrestlers exaggerate a lot in wrestling and stories get embellished. So he's a good worker, and he got over. Good worker for being able to work people. He's also in Beyond the Mat, by the way, which is just coming to my mind now. So yeah, he even made Beyond the Mat. At one point, WWE was talking to him about doing an angle with John Cena, that they ultimately gave the role to Aaron Aguilera, I guess, because New Jack's involvement there was going to be some sort of stabbing or something, but it never happened.